Hey everybody, it is new equipment day here at the Book Cafe. Got a brand new HD webcam and this frankly amazing microphone that I am super looking forward to using. And let me tell you, this is going to be a great review to inaugurate them, and I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. Hello everyone, welcome to the new and improved Book Cafe, where we finally have a camera that won't die on me midway through filming. We do book reviews, interviews with people in the publishing industry, and we talk about the general state of fantasy fiction. If you've been here before, welcome back, and if you're new here, consider hitting the subscribe button. I always put a little button at the end just to make it real easy. Today's book is going to be a special one, which is another reason why I'm excited for this video. It's a newer book, just came out a few months ago, and the editor personally asked me to make this review. So I read it, I loved it, it's definitely worth inaugurating my new equipment on, and it's one hell of a ride. The book is called City of Lies by Sam Hawke. It's the author's first novel, book one of a series called The Poison Wars. I feel like any review of this book would be remiss if I didn't include the opening line, which is, "I was 7 years old the first time my uncle poisoned me." There's a lot to unpack in that, and the book makes a lot of promises, not only follows through on them, manages to follow through on promises you didn't realize it was making. It's the story of a brother and sister, Jovan and Kalina, who are members of a family who've been working through most of their history as poison testers for their city's High Chancellor. But they do it in secret. Jovan's uncle serves the current High Chancellor. However, at a party, both the Chancellor and the uncle get poisoned and rapidly die. Soon afterward, the city comes under siege from a rebellion consisting of the kingdom's own countryside subjects, taking everyone completely by surprise. Kalina and Jovan have to help the Chancellor keep the city from burning, while also figuring out who was responsible for assassinating their predecessors. The book sounds great just from that description. I don't think I managed to do it justice. To be honest, I feel like the blurb on the back undersells it heavily. Even if this weren't a first work, this would be an accomplishment. And while the first quarter of the book does kind of drag on a little bit, by the time you're about a third of the way through, the pace picks up to the point where it took me like a week to get through the first third and a day to get through the rest. There are a lot of great things to say about this book. It's an astonishingly kind story. Even though it's the middle of a siege, in the middle of a wartime, it really goes out of its way to show you enough effort from a small number of people can make a community really come together and truly help each other, and how telling the truth at the right moments and exhibiting solidarity at the right moments can be a powerful force for good. So let's talk about some of the things that make this book unique. The first thing is that it takes two things that are usually very difficult for fantasy writers to deal with. Poison is usually an afterthought or a plot device, a one-off, an event. Someone gets poisoned, and either they recover or they don't, and that's the end of it. And most fantasy fiction I've found that deals more heavily with poison focuses on the people who do the poisoning, which I think has a lot to do with the more grim, dark nature of fantasy lately. And I want to commend Hawke for her bravery in making the protagonists people whose very existence is based around preventing poisonings, and if that fails, curing them. It's a very difficult concept to tackle, and the way it's done adds a lot of dimensionality to the world. Even though everything takes place in pretty much a single city, you get all of these hints that there's a much bigger world going on outside of it, simply from the concept. Now, the thing that really impressed me was the attention that Hawke pays to logistics. A lot of fantasy novels build cities in ways that they think sound cool and don't make a whole lot of sense. And the concept of the siege is, again, usually more of a one-off. The siege is very hard to do right and very hard to make not boring. But in this book, the city is built in such a way... There's no map, by the way. The fact that all this was done without a map I find singularly impressive. Anyway, the city is built in such a way that it's built on economics, not on rule of cool. So economic pressures and resource scarcity is an immense plot point, which is something that's very difficult to do. One of the bits that really stuck with me is that neither side knows how to make siege weaponry. And so the first siege weaponry they build is inaccurate and underpowered. And over the course of the book, they get better. But ammunition is still a concern, to the point where the primary source of ammunition is actually the city's own walls. Both sides are taking apart the walls and the houses in order to have things to fling at each other. There's a big focus on the bridges and how much of the battle is going to come down to who can hold them versus who can take them. And there's a lot of thought that goes into every bit of this. And then, on top of that, both of the main characters are disabled. Now, that's something that's particularly risky. I do not claim to speak for anyone who has had similar experiences to those of the main characters. I feel like the way that the author handled Jovan's, I'm assuming, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and Kalina's physical disabilities were very respectful. It's a lot like Daredevil, you know. The disability is an integral part of the character, but at the same time, it affords him opportunities that he wouldn't otherwise have. Part of the reason why Jovan is so good at his job is because he is an obsessive, and he is paranoid, and he knows it. So he's constantly rereading all of his notes, constantly on the lookout for anything that might get poisoned. And because he can't stop thinking about something until he's gotten a result, he ends up with these very interesting innovations that advance the plot in very surprising ways. Kalina, at the same time, because she has physical disabilities, knows that a lot of people don't notice her when they look at her. And so she uses that to slip under the radar and gather information that no one else could get. The novel has a bit of a surprise romance arc towards the end, which usually when it's introduced that late in the game tends to be rushed and not great. But this particular arc was paced and handled extremely well. You could see that a lot of thought was put into it. It wasn't just romance for romance's sake. It's actually plot critical. So it's handled with as much care as everything else. And this is a very careful book. Everything is in the details, and there is not a single detail misplaced. I absolutely love the characters. I loved Kalina. I loved Tane, the new Chancellor. He's my favorite. Jovan was great. I mentioned that it's a little bit slow going at the beginning. The other strike I would have against this book is that sometimes it's very hard to keep track of the minor characters. There are kind of a lot of them. Yeah, and the book really asks you to care when one of them shows up after 50 pages and then dies, and you're like, who is this guy again? Other than that, though, this is an excellent book, an excellent first work. It's definitely a buy it new rating. There is very little wrong with this book. It's absolutely fantastic. The only reason it doesn't get Collect Every Edition is because I reserve Collect Every Edition for sort of instant classics. There is a good possibility that this book is going to fly under the radar, and I think that that is a crime. So if you watch this video, spread it. Show the video to your friends, or tell them about the book. Read it. You're going to want to. It's not instant classic, but it is some of the best pure genre I've read in a while, especially considering that this is a brand new author. So the link is below. Definitely check it out if you get the chance. If you've already read it, let us know what you thought in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Do you disagree with me? I'd love to start a conversation. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to show up by clicking on the like button, here to subscribe, and here for more videos like this from the Book Cafe. I'm going to try to be upping this to 3 videos a week, and my last video had a review request on it. So tomorrow I am going to be reviewing Brandon Sanderson's Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell. Great title, right? So I look forward to seeing you all then, and until then, read good fantasy.